This is the story of how to survive the worst plague in European history. Europe in the year 1346 was a continent at ease. It had just emerged from a period of relative peace and prosperity after the devastation of the 100 Years' War between England and France. The Black Death, also known as the bubonic plague, would soon arrive in Europe via trading ships from Asia. This horrific plague would kill an estimated 25 million people, which is 1 out of every 3 people in Europe. So this video will teach you how to survive the bubonic plague. The first thing you need to know about the plague is that it's not actually one disease but 3 diseases, and they all kill. The 3 plagues are the bubonic plague, the pneumonic plague, and the septicemic plague. The most common type of plague is the bubonic plague. This type of plague can be recognized by its painful swellings in the lymph nodes, called buboes, which is where it got its name. These buboes would grow to the size of an apple and would either burst and drain or turn black and rot away. You could also get the pneumonic plague, which attacked your lungs and made breathing very difficult. If you were unfortunate enough to have both types of plague, you would get the third and most deadly form of plague, the septicemic plague. This form of plague makes your blood boil and turn to a dark color. It kills very fast and is 100% fatal. The Black Death was caused by a bacteria called Yersinia pestis. This bacteria is found naturally in rodents and their fleas. These rats would leave their rodent hosts and find new hosts on the ships coming to Europe from Asia. The fleas would bite humans and transmit the bacteria through their saliva. Once the bacteria entered the human body, it would multiply rapidly and spread throughout the lymphatic system. This is where the painful swellings would appear. Then the bacteria would make its way to the lungs, where it would start to infect them. At the same time, the bacteria would enter the bloodstream and infect it as well. This is how you get the pneumonic and septicemic forms of the plague. This disease had 3 stages. In the first stage, you would experience a fever, weakness, and pain. In the second stage, the buboes would develop. In the third stage, the buboes would burst. You would bleed from them and the infection would eventually kill you. If you were infected with the bubonic plague, there was only a 50% chance of survival. And if you were infected with the pneumonic plague, your chances of survival dropped to only 10%. With these odds, you might think everyone would have done anything to avoid getting infected. But this wasn't true. Back then, people didn't know what caused the plague. They thought it was a punishment from God for people's sins. They also thought it was a punishment for their bad air. So people tried everything to purify the air, like burning incense, hanging herbs and flowers around their house, and even making their friends and family inhale these fumes. Others thought that the best way to get rid of the plague was to let the blood out of the body. So they would cut themselves and others so that the bad blood could leave the body. People also did the opposite. They cauterized people with hot irons and heated bricks to try to cook the plague out of them. Can you imagine the pain those poor people must have felt? Obviously, all of these methods don't work, and the plague would continue to devastate Europe. So here are some tips on how you could have survived the plague. Tip number 1. Avoid crowded places. Back then, most cities were very overcrowded. All of the major cities in Europe were packed full of people and rats. This gave the plague bacteria the perfect condition to thrive and spread quickly. So if you wanted to avoid the plague, you should have lived in the countryside. Unfortunately, most people couldn't do this because back then, life in the countryside was much harder than in the city. Tip number 2. Try to keep yourself clean. Even though people back then didn't know that bacteria caused the plague, they did know that filth and bad smells attracted illness. So most people tried to keep themselves clean and avoid smelly people. Some rich people took this so seriously that they perfumed themselves hundreds of times per day. Tip number 3. Cover up. One way to protect yourself from the plague was to wear protective clothing. Since the plague was transmitted through flea bites, wearing protective clothing could help you avoid getting bitten. The best material for protective clothing was linen because it's a rough material that fleas don't like. If you couldn't get any linen, the next best material was wool, because wool is itchy and dry. Fleas hate that. If you couldn't find any protective clothing, you could always make a protective hat. Hats were very effective against the plague because the plague mostly spread through the head and face. A good hat would have a tight-fitting net over the top. This would prevent fleas from getting inside. You could also make a hood out of this net material. This would protect your entire upper body from fleas. If you're wondering why no one wore these nets all the time, it's because they were very itchy and uncomfortable. Tip number 4. Stay indoors. Another tip to avoid the plague was to stay indoors during the day. During the day, you would encounter more people, which meant you had a higher chance of getting infected. Also, during the day, you would encounter more rats since they were out looking for food. Tip number 5. Eat garlic. There is some evidence that eating garlic could help fight off the plague. Garlic has a strong odor that repels flies and rats. Flies and rats carry many diseases, including the plague, so keeping them away could help you avoid getting sick. Tip number 6. Drink alcohol. Alcohol is a great antiseptic, which means it kills germs. It can be used to disinfect wounds, which could help you fight off an infection. So if someone gave you a tourniquet or bandaged your arm after you were bitten by a rat, ask them if they used alcohol. If they didn't, take their bandage off and disinfect your wound yourself. Alcohol was also useful for disinfecting rooms. People back then would throw alcohol on their floors and furniture to try to kill the plague bacteria. Tip number 7. Pray. If you were to get the plague, your survival depended on your faith. There were many religious relics that people believed could cure the plague. For example, people would carry around a medal of Saint Sebastian, who was a saint known for curing plagues. People would also go on pilgrimages to holy sites like the supposed tomb of Saint Sebastian. Tip number 8. Avoid saints. It may sound weird to say avoid saints, but during the plague, many saints became very dangerous. Saints were revered figures in the eyes of Christians, so people would often kiss their hands, their robes, their relics, etc. This spread the plague very easily. So when visiting a saint, make sure to keep your distance. Tip number 9. Flagellate yourself. Flagellation is the practice of whipping yourself. Many Christians whipped themselves during the plague because they believed it would help cure them of their disease and the boils. Flagellation was also seen as a way to confess one's sins and get closer to God during the plague. Tip number 10. Poison. If you were desperate, you could try to poison yourself with a substance called Peruvian bark. This substance comes from a South American tree, and it contains quinine, which is the main ingredient in our modern anti-malaria drugs. People used it to treat the plague because it helps lower fevers, but it also kills the bacteria that causes malaria. However, you should be careful when using this medicine, because too much of it can make you go blind and deaf. So use it with caution. Now, there's no guarantee that any of these tips would help you survive the plague, but they could increase your chances. So remember, if you ever find yourself in a medieval city during a plague outbreak, stay in the country, keep yourself clean, cover up, stay indoors, eat garlic, drink alcohol, pray, keep your distance from saints, whip yourself, and consider poisoning yourself. Good luck. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, check out my other content. I make videos about medieval life and other cool stuff. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.